Hello and welcome back to the Out of Program podcast. So today we're joined by Dr Meenakshi Jhala, an NIHR Academic Clinical Fellow at King's College London, where she combines clinical practice with research on clinical AI. She is also the Chief of Staff at Syndicates, an AI healthcare agents company, and founded Tiny Ventures to help educate early-stage healthcare investors. Hi Meenakshi, welcome to the show.
Hi, James. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, great to have you join us. So I always start with the same question, which is around what got you into medicine. So, as mentioned, you're an academic clinical fellow at King's. You've previously trained at Imperial. What kind of drew you into academic medicine?
Academic medicine in general, I think it probably started all the way in medical school where, you have your first taster of research and you're like, oh, well, I need all of these things for my points to make sure I stay in London. When I got my points and whatever not, I just, really enjoyed the kind of aspect of thinking laterally when it comes to medicine. I'm sure you know, so you do F1, F2, and a lot of the time I found that I was just kind of limited because of the guidelines, and having that kind of academic element meant that I was kind of back in my creativity and, thinking outside of the box and thinking out of program.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically that's what drew me to academic medicine. I've always been someone that doesn't really follow the crowd. Like, for example, I think when I was in year 8, we had this essay that we had to write about a dystopian world. And I wrote the most abstract thing about tomatoes being grown in a greenhouse and how there were like perfect conditions, but just zero room for personal growth, and how that would be the most suffocating thing for me. So when I realized that medicine, a lot of it is guideline based, I was like, I definitely need something else to really fulfill the side of me that has a lot of fire. So
So you were that tomato? Or rather, you didn't want it. You didn't want to be that tomato. Fair enough. And it's funny. I haven't heard this topic of points for quite some time, because they've changed the system completely. But everyone from my generation, we talk about points this, points that, and yeah, in some ways, like obviously it was hoop jumping, but in some ways it did the job because it clearly encouraged you to explore different interests, and then got you into academic medicine and realized that you didn't want to be boxed in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I didn't know that I needed to do specific things to get into like London, then maybe I would have kind of postponed it. But all the way back in second year, I was like, okay, fine, I need my 2 publications. Let's see how to go about it. And luckily, I came across different startups that I worked with and got involved in research through that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the system is right now. And obviously you've got the whole random allocator, which I think it's a shame. But in the academic pathway, it's still very much merit-based, which is quite nice.
And what is the topic of your academic clinical fellowship? Because you do a bit in AI, is that right?
Yeah, I don't know why I'm doing it because I have zero technical background, but I think the way the world is going, irrespective of you being good at something, just kind of get stuck in. So my ACF is in digital health. I'm training to be a GP. And what that means is that I get very much of a kind of general exposure to anything and everything. So I picked a supervisor that was within digital health. His name's Dr. Ian Marshall. Amazing person, so supportive. And the project is essentially we're building a large language model for climate change health emergencies. They've already started. I start in August, so my contributions will be from there. But really excited actually, because I'm sure like a lot of the research that comes from lower income countries, many of them don't get published in Western journals. And so then there is a bias when it comes to actually addressing illnesses that people in those countries face. And so how do we actually address that? So it's a global movement. It's not just with Kings. And that's why I'm so excited, because I think healthcare needs to be for all, not just those that can get access to kind of the cool things in healthcare. Really excited to get stuck in, because right now with AI, you've got the regulation front, but now we're going into evaluation and we're looking at whether the AI actually does what it's supposed to do. So I'm hoping that's where my input's going to be.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool. To work on designing a specific LLM is, that's quite frontier stuff. Well done.
Yeah. I don't take any credit for it. I'm just very, very fortunate to actually help contribute and see where the world is going in healthcare right now. But yeah, we'll keep you in the loop.
Yeah, far too modest. That's not in keeping with this the show at all. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the alternative experiences that you had. So you started off quite early on as a venture analyst at Rise Asset Management. So, and that was during your training. So can you tell me a little bit about what encouraged you to explore that, and how did that opportunity come about?
So I did my time as a venture analyst in 5th year of med school. I'd already tasted quite a bit of non-clinical medicine by that time. So I had worked with Medic Bleep, which was an amazing startup. I had done an internship with Candesic. By that time, I was also an editorial board member / fellow with BMJ Innovation. So I was already on this journey of like, okay, let's see what non-clinical medicine is about. So, and I came across VC, and that was very interesting, because I actually only reached out to Dr. John Lee Allen for doing the medical elective for Arise. But he was like, oh, why don't you just join us before? So I ended up working with them throughout final year for about 10 months, and was conducting due diligence on ADHD tools, like objective diagnosis of ADHD tools. And I think eventually they did end up investing in the startup that I was doing due diligence on, which was really cool, because what they were trying to do was basically looking at the diagnosis of ADHD using eye saccades. And so from my neuro hat, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like if we can do this, we can kind of reduce the waiting lists by a significant amount. So yeah, I found that, okay, in VC, what you can do is you've got your clinical knowledge, you've got the element of building relationships, and then, there is also a financial return. And I was like, this is a nice sweet spot that I can kind of see myself in. That was probably the starting point of this kind of interest in healthcare investing.
Yeah, because healthcare investing is a recurring theme in your career, and we're going to, of course, explore that a lot more. But what was it specifically about this role that stood out against all the other kind of things that you were exploring? Because already at that point in your training, as a 5th year medical student, you'd already built an impressive portfolio.
Healthcare investing in general, I knew I wanted to have a scalable impact on healthcare and human lives, full stop. That's always been a motto of mine. Alongside that, I knew I was a generalist. I don't think I would have gone into a specialty, except if it was anesthetics, but maybe in another life. And what healthcare investing does is that, as I mentioned, I think it's got so many different elements to it that, one, there's always variety. You never get bored. But the best part about it is the fact that you're always on the front end of innovation. Like, you will be that person that sees it firsthand. And I just find that, I don't know, it just excites me so much. That's why I was like, yeah, this is definitely what I want to do.
Well, you speak with a lot of passion about it, so I can absolutely hear it in how you describe it. But just taking a step back then, you're a 5th year medical student, and as I mentioned, you've already had a number of kind of impressive kind of roles. And I'm just thinking a little bit about, I guess, some of the audience who might be at an earlier stage, who are in medical school themselves, thinking, wow, that's really impressive you've achieved. And I remember when I was a medical student, looking around me and identifying people, probably like yourself, where you were already miles ahead. So how was it that you were able to get these impressive kind of roles at such an early stage in your career compared to, say, your compatriots?
I was always curious. How it started was I just felt like there was more to life. And I guess the curiosity comes from my upbringing. So my dad's always made me and my brother think about if something exists, question why it exists, question could it be better. And then my mum has always taught us to be very hardworking. So fortunate enough to have that kind of background and support. So when medical school happened, I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna be a doctor. Is this all I want to do? And I say all, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but considering what the system state was at that point, I was like, how am I actually supposed to have a scalable impact like this? I just couldn't see how to do it. And so I'd like to think I've got a bit of an ability to build relationships with people. And that's probably, again, around the curiosity. I love learning about things, about people and what their background is and stuff. And fortunately, that's helped when it comes to Healthtech and kind of getting roles, because the BMJ Innovations role came about because I did research with Medic Bleep, and I kept in touch with Dr. Helen Serrana, Dr. Ashley McKim, and I'm still in touch with them. And now, obviously, I'm associate editor of BMJ Innovations, and I don't think that would have been possible if I hadn't kind of just been like, hey, what's up? Do you want to get a coffee? Or you want to get on a call? And I think I was just very persistent that they were probably just like, okay, she's being annoying, so let's just take her on board. I don't know. But what I would definitely advise people that are on a similar trajectory is be curious, build relationships, and also kind of execute on the things that you are passionate about. Don't just be like, oh yeah, I want to do this, and then let's just let it be. Anything that you do, even if that's just writing a literature review or setting up an event or absolutely anything, just make sure you do your best, because people will pick up on that and you'll get the next role through that.
That is great, timeless advice. You also founded something as well along the way, which is EMS Mess, to support clinician wellbeing. So what were the experiences in the NHS that kind of inspired you to create this? How did it come about?
Yeah. So it was actually an ode to Maslow. So I'm sure you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So when I did my neuro degree, my dissertation was on the well-being of medical biomedical students. So always had an interest in clinician well-being, medical student well-being, etc. Very passionate about it. I also feel like as medics, we go through so much and we kind of just have to get on with it, which I wish we wouldn't have to do. Anyway, so that was always there in the background. And when I was in foundation year 1, I wasn't really coming across many people who were, I suppose, in the same boat as me when it comes to thinking outside of the box and in Healthtech. So it's like, okay, well, why don't I create this space where we meet up once a month and we just talk about all the cool things that we're doing. And the goal was to help clinicians reach the top level of the pyramid, which is self-actualisation. But obviously, you work from the bottom up, and the bottom level was, food, shelter, etc. And the next level was relationships. And so I was hoping that through the dinners, we were cultivating those relationships. And with time, I'd help people connect to others so that they could get the relevant kind of internships and jobs. Met some amazing people through that, and I'm still friends with them. I really do want to pick the whole project back up, maybe doing it at a scale, a scalable way instead of just a WhatsApp group chat. But maybe I'll work on it at some point.
Wow. So the dream is still alive. It's just on hiatus.
Yeah, I think so. But also, Jing, I feel like anytime I interact with anyone, I still try and incorporate everything that I did in Maslow's mess with that one-on-one relationship. So like giving back to them, making sure that they're doing okay mentally, physically, and seeing if I can help them in any way. So yeah, watch this space. Maybe I'll do it at some point.
Brilliant. Now, our worlds intersected at some point, because you actually came and joined us at Patchwork Health to help us build some of our clinician-facing products. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? How did that come about?
Yeah, how did it come about? I wrote a very long essay on LinkedIn when I was in F1 about how the hospital I was working at, we had to print out blood test forms, physically write on the blood test forms what bay and what bed it was for, and also write the date as to which the bloods should be taken. And it was the absolute bane of my life because, you finish at 5 p.m. and you're literally sitting there till like 6, writing writing on 40 different papers and then putting it in each thing. And I was like, what am I doing? And so I wrote this really long essay on LinkedIn, and weirdly, it blew up. And then Sharon, who I think was your CGO at the time, she contacted me and we got talking, and she's like, well, we're trying to build this clinician-centered auto rostering tool. We're building this and we'd love your input. And so that's when all of that started, and it was an amazing experience. And what I loved about what Patchwork did, and what also Sharon incorporated and really kind of exuded out, was the fact that I wasn't just a clinician at that point. I was very much part of the team, and doing those workshop sessions with the engineers and looking at how the product can kind of go from A to Z, and really being involved in that journey. Very, very grateful to be part of that. And so I think it's probably one of the experiences that kind of showed me that actually doctors have so many different transferable skills. So kudos to you, Patchwork. And also the fact that you guys have released it now is amazing.
It's funny that you thought that that's still sensitive, because that was so many years ago. We wouldn't be a very good product business if we weren't working on things and releasing it. But yeah, that work absolutely set the foundation for what then became AI enabled preference based rostering, because you needed to auto roster to begin with. So yeah, absolutely, you helped get the ball rolling on that one.
No, I'm glad. I think clinician preference really does need to come in the center of all of this. And I guess it kind of links in with what I was saying about Maslow's mess, where we really need to support clinicians with what they want to do. And I feel like the trajectory that Patchwork is going towards is super, super interesting, because I think you guys will really make that possible.
Ah, too kind. I'm blushing. Now, from Patchwork then, somewhere along the way, you founded something that is still running today, which is Tiny Ventures, which helps educate early stage individuals on becoming investors. So again, how did that start? Where did you spot that opportunity, and where is it today?
So Tiny Ventures started about a year and a few months ago. I did a fellowship with the London Venture Capital Network at the start of GPSD1. Because I was like, okay, I definitely know I want to go into VC. Doing a general practice ACF was, again, very intentional. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, then I need to make sure I'm doing other things alongside. Did the fellowship, came across amazing intellectuals. I was the only doctor in the cohort, which was, kind of scary. Had absolutely zero finance knowledge, would always answer questions confidently but incorrectly. But hey ho, we learn from that. My main goal was to get more doctors into investing. But then I met my co-founder, Sam, who is the most bubbly / forward-thinking person that I've come across when it comes to VC. And he just really wanted to help students break into VC. And I was like, okay, well, I want to get doctors into VC. You want a more generic outlook, so why don't we work together? And we've done about 2 competitions now, and how the competitions work is that we give tangible experience to investors when it comes to actual due diligence. So I'm sure you know, Jane, like place that you're in, you get access to the decision makers and the rooms where like really important decisions occur. But what about the people that don't have access to that, but they're still building something, or they still want to kind of get into investing? How do we make that easier for them? And so how the competition works is that you get into teams at the start. You analyze a startup as you would if you were presenting to an investment committee, and you go through different stages. And at the end of it, you present to a live audience of investors with VC judges. You could get scouted as talent. That's great for the startups that are being analyzed. And it's indirectly actually become like an accelerator for investors. I felt quite proud to kind of come up with that phrase. But genuinely, that's what it's become. And it's great.
Let's talk a little bit more about tiny ventures, because this is something that's still going on. How did you kind of get started with this? Because you had this idea, you met a great co-founder, but as with building all these kind of community-based kind of initiatives, getting off the ground is pretty tough. Like, how did you attract that interest and that participation?
I think I probably didn't see it in that way. I was like, okay, I want to do something, so let's just get it done. And I think that's just my motto with a lot of things now. I remove any emotion from it and become kind of very military, where I'm like, okay, what's the problem we need to solve? Can it be solved? Yes. Okay, let's just go and do it. If not, then how can we solve it? Can we not solve it at all? Okay, fine, let's move on. So fortunately with VC, a lot of students do want to get into it. So perhaps, we were lucky on that front. But what we've also seen now is not only students, it's also clinicians, it's also people that want to make a career change. And what we're finding is that the VC ecosystem is very welcoming when it comes to new ideas. And so, yeah, we've had a really good kind of welcome into the system. The launch was great. The second competition we did, we had judges from like Eurazeo, Atomico, Briga, and then Concept Ventures. And actually, our winners are going to spend a day at Concept Ventures' offices, which I think is incredible, because it just shows how welcoming people are, and incredibly grateful to Reese for that. So, yeah, I think we were lucky, but also I think I'm very like, let's just get it done. kind of thing.
God, you should have worked for me when I was the chief operating officer. Could have done with a bit of that military precision. I want to just explore more about healthcare VC, because that is something that has been a recurring theme for you, all the way from Rise to Tiny Ventures.
Yeah.
What is it about being a clinician and getting into VC that kind of appeals to you? Like, where do you think the fresh angle comes from?
Where does a fresh angle come from? I'm tired of things not being changed where I'm working. When you're working as a clinician, the things that will actually allow you to do your job as a clinician, the thing that you've studied 5 to 6 years for, why can't we just focus on those things? Like, why is it that only the really cool and the sexy innovations get funded because that's where the money is? And it's incredibly frustrating. And it goes back to the story that I said about the LinkedIn post. I mean, that still exists, by the way, Jane. Like, I think they still have paper notes. I still spend about 30 to 40 minutes trying to understand, how do I book a cesarean section on the operating list, because I've not done it before. I'm getting stressed because of it, not because I'm not a good clinician, but because I don't know how to work the tech. And I think we can definitely automate that. But as clinicians, we know where the challenges are. We know where the pain points are. And so why can't we fund things that actually can improve the system, and it will have an indirect and a direct impact on healthcare in general, and actually benefit everyone, not just the kind of well-off people. Controversial statement to make, but I genuinely do think we need to change things in a way where everyone has some kind of benefit.
Look, absolutely. in the world of AI, where there's a concentration of wealth, and with entry-level jobs being kind of impacted, we do need to think more about, like, how we distribute that and make it equitable. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that, a lot of these initiatives are very kind of value-driven, mission-driven things to support people in their own kind of journeys, and also just kind of level the playing field. So I want to ask you, why is that a driver for you? Why does that motivate you?
It motivates me because the place that I am at the moment, I've worked very, very hard to get there. And perhaps I feel like if I had more support, maybe I would be in a different position. I don't know. But then again, I'm also kind of fortunate for my own drive. I mean, there's different ways to go about it, but I just find it very unfair that sometimes some people get more of a head start and others don't, especially if there's so much talent and untapped potential that exists, and perhaps they're just not able to reach it because they don't have the resources. So one of the things I really, really want to do in like 5 years' time, when hopefully I've exited a fund or whatever, is have this kind of charity that supports adolescents who perhaps don't come from backgrounds of business or entrepreneurship or anything that would kind of give them a head start and really show them what like a fruitful environment actually looks like, so that they can live the life that, I don't know, if you're looking at quantum physics, there's the 0.001% probability that you could be your best self. I would love to help them observe that and kind of tap into that potential.
I mean, that's an incredible North Star. And I think, a lot of what you described resonates with me as well. Like, the patchwork journey was not always smooth. Anas and I, when we started out, we were doctors. This was 10 years ago, where there weren't that many options. And so it was a really underdeveloped ecosystem, and we weren't connected with tech or with investors. So we really had to grind it out. And I do think, like, whilst, of course, people look at Patchwork today and it's a very impressive business, we felt like we played that game on hard mode. And it could have been so much easier had we had that access or, those relationships. So completely resonate with you. And I also think that is a motivator for me to help others as well. And it's so interesting that that's how the chips fall in some ways, because you can imagine that people who have been through a hard time may not want to help others because they may feel like, actually, I had a hard time, you should have a hard time, which is, to be honest, a mentality that I hear a lot in the hospital, around going through the pain to make it to the end. Yeah. But it's nice to hear someone actually kind of express it in the same way that I would as well, that, I had a really tough time, and it'd be great to kind of give back on that, because of all the learnings from having a hard time, other people don't need to have that same experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I also just go by a saying by Gandhiji, which is, be the change that you want to be in the world. Maybe that's gotten me in like pickles and whatever not, but I will never regret helping someone out or being kind to someone, and I'll just take that to my grave. But do you know what, Jane? I feel like there's a lot of people like that within Healthtech, because they genuinely want to help others out. So you've got like Dr. Alice McGee, you've got Dr. Azim Alam, you've got so many different doctors that are in great positions right now and obviously giving back. And perhaps it's like a Healthtech thing, because you're like, well, if I can have some, you should have some too. But maybe it's just the kind of people I've met.
No, fair enough. You might be right. I mean, I don't spend enough time with people from other industries to be able to perfectly assess it. But look, and great that you shouted out to out of program previous guests. So thank you for the plug.
Always plugging.
So we now move on to something that you are about to launch, and actually again where our worlds intersect, which is DX Capital, or Differential Capital, which is an angel syndicate that is dedicated to clinicians. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that.
It feels surreal, but it feels like it's very much needed. What I described there when it comes to actually funding innovations that clinicians need, that's what DX Capital is going to address. So it's a clinician-led angel syndicate that will look at kind of pre-seed to seed, early stage startups in health tech, biotech, pharma, and really just focusing in on our clinical expertise and becoming strategic investors. And then the rest of it you can kind of see in the launch, but very, very excited to be building it with you and Azim, because I think the three of us bring in so much. Well, this is going to sound very arrogant, but I feel like you need to sound arrogant if you're building something. So this is my go at doing that. We're very credible people that have great networks and each individually bring so much to the table. And so for us to be doing this is great. I'm so excited. I'm like, it's like a dream come true. I never thought I would be in this position 4 years after graduating, but here we are.
Yeah. I'm really excited as well. And I guess, we've been a bit coy around talking about this. And of course, there's still a lot for us to get done, of course. And we'll save a lot of it for the launch and for the subsequent events. It's going to be big. But I suppose just talking a little bit from, my perspective, I think that, the industry and our community has wanted to see this manifest for a long time. Before you and I connected about this topic, I had so many people come up to me and say, oh, wouldn't it be great if there was a clinician-based fund or a clinician-based angel syndicate? And that was where it was all left at. People would say, oh gosh, wouldn't that be great? And just kind of whistle and walk off. I didn't feel like anyone was there to kind of take the bull by the horns and do it. And it got to the point for me where it was like, people keep talking about this, we should do something. And I was at a point where, certainly recently, where, going from being the chief operating officer, which was a very, as the name implies, a very operationally intense role, to transitioning to become the chief growth officer, I had a bit more time to kind of explore these different things. And so the time was right for me. And then I think it just so happened that, you and I connected because actually a founder that we both know mentioned that this was something that you were looking to set up. And, again, from your LinkedIn posts, from your activities, I knew that you would do a great job at it. And then I was also in conversations with Azim as well, who is, a prominent angel investor, either through Byte Labs or on a personal basis. So it all kind of coalesced together for me. And I think, this is something that I think will be very exciting for the community if we pull it off. And I think this recording right here is kind of like our stake in the ground as we so we'll refer back to it and see whether or not it was a big success, but very excited for it to come to life.
Yeah, no, me too. And I think there's been so many roles, Jing, that I've applied to and I've been given feedback that doctors can't be good investors. So my hypothesis here is we not only can we be good investors, but we will change the game of healthcare investing, because I refuse to believe that we can't combine clinical knowledge with return on investment. So it's going to happen.
That's the thesis. We'll listen back to this in a year's time and, we'll see how far we've got. I suppose then, this comes to present day. And I wanted to talk a bit about just the variety of the roles that you've had. I think, it's super impressive that you've explored different things, and investment is clearly a theme. But from that, you've done events, you've done community things, you've, of course, worked in funds. So it's all a different flavor of operations, of which, coalesces around that passion of yours. But with all these kind of simultaneous roles, how do you balance it all? What with the context switching and also with the time commitment? So how do you make it all work for you?
I remember when we first met for our first ever coffee, you were like, oh, how do you do it all? And I was like, I went home and I was like, how do I do it? I've never actually thought about this. And then I got into my head and I was like, maybe I should be more stressed. maybe I'm not doing a good job at anything. But I guess that's what it is. I refuse to attach emotion to any of this, because I think as soon as you attach emotion, or at least in my case, that's when I get slowed down. So yeah, I don't attach emotion. But also in ST1, I had a great senior and a general practice partner. And he would always tell me, Meenakshi, like, put things into boxes and kind of compartmentalize in that way. And so now mentally, I'm just like, I've got a clinical box and I've got a non-clinical box. And when I'm doing my clinical work, that's it. Like, I'm completely focused on that. But when I'm doing the non-clinical stuff, for me, all the different roles that I hold, they're not separate. They're all very much kind of aligned and, I suppose, complementary. Because at the end of the day, I don't see them as roles. I see them as the different kind of skills that I'm practicing. So, for example, today I was at Syndicates, which is a company that's building AI clinic. And if I was just to kind of state the kind of skills that I was using today, it would very much be kind of summarizing data. It would be kind of communicating it, persuading the two co-founders, Shahir and Mark, on why my presentation is better than theirs. And so, yeah, I think it all comes down to the skills, which you use with any kind of role that you do. So for me, it's like, yeah, I try not to get overwhelmed, because I'm just like, okay, everything kind of bounces off each other. And the great thing about Healthtech is that everything is kind of aligned. Like, you do need to know how to sell something. You do need to know how to break down complex information into kind of digestible chunks, and it all kind of makes sense. But yeah, I suppose that's my way of describing that perhaps I'm not really doing a good job, but I'm just about surviving.
Well, gosh, I didn't realize I caused such emotional distress and introspection. I mean, that's certainly what I've been accused of when I was the COO of Patchwork, but I thought I'd escape that part.
No, it's good, because I think one does need to reflect and be like, wait, what am I actually doing? And does it all make sense? And why am I doing this? And why do I have so many roles? Is it just badge collecting? Because if I'm badge collecting, that's not going to be good. And I guess whoever's listening to this, if you are going out there and you're like, oh, well, I did this role, and I'm putting it on my CV, one thing I would really ask them to do is reflect on, what did you actually do? What did you actually execute on? Because your next role, you will be asked about it. And if you're a badge collector, it's difficult to get out of that.
100%. I think that's such an important point, because I too was a badge collector. But I think you start off by collecting the badges and then you realize it's all vanity, and there's such a narrative within like entrepreneurship around, like, avoid the people who want the titles, you need to be, selecting people who want the impact. And I think that broadly translates into what we're talking about, because at the end of the day, you could somehow worm your way into publications and get your name on papers. But if you didn't do the primary research, then that's kind of the point. It's a nice output to get a publication, but ultimately, it's about doing the work and learning and becoming an expert. So I think that's super, super relevant. And I suppose on that note, I want to kind of wrap up with a final question that actually ties into what you've just mentioned, which is, you've given a lot of great advice, and I guess summarize it for me, because what would you advise clinicians who want to follow a similar path? Like, what advice would you give them?
I would say, like, you've already done medicine, so you've already got something in your bag that is sustainable. It's stable. It's a pathway that you can see what it looks like. You can see the route to being a consultant. So you've got that. Now, if you really want to get out into the world of health tech and just the non-clinical world, just like really sit down and ask yourself, what is it that I'm passionate about? Because in the world of health tech, passion is what will drive you forward, and it will make you put in the hours that you actually do need to put in to become successful. So be curious, actually execute on the things that you are curious about. And that doesn't mean just like going on a course or whatever. Like, put in the work, go work with a startup, do it unpaid, I'm sorry, like that is how it's going to happen, unfortunately. Learn. And then I can't stress the importance of building the relationships. Keep in touch with all the people that you've worked with. 100% of all of the work that I've gotten has come through relationships. And I'll give you an example. So Syndicates, I'm working with them now, but my relationship with Shahir stems all the way back to maybe 2.5 years ago. And we just kept in touch, and he was like, do you want to help us out with this? And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. But don't build relationships in a sense of being transactional, like actually be interested in the person. But yeah, so just in summary, be curious, execute, and build relationships.
Fantastic. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Meenakshi, or should I call you Execution, for the for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And for those listening, if you like what you hear and want to support the show, please do like and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or whatever podcast platform you're currently listening to us on. It would mean a lot to me, and it would help spread the message to others exploring alternative paths. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time. Bye-bye.